late this week. I had a few issues, teething problems, but we'll get into that later. So this week, Broadmax show, first week of the month, getting into the real peak end of Q4. I know a lot of people are tired and hopefully making some money as well. It's a bit tough out there for some. But Adam's back. How we doing, Adam?
Dude, doing awesome. It's feels like forever since we've done this, but excited to riff with you, man. It's good to be back.
Yes, it is. Basically, the reason we normally go obviously live on the Tuesday, but the problem I had was I pulled out my rig to deliver a workshop and then pretty much blew up the studio. And as I said to you yesterday, I spent all day trying to set it back up. So we're here now. What we're covering on your end? You want to go straight into Explorer, right?
Yeah, that sounds good. So, if you've been, tinkering or seeing the belly of the beast of Seller Central as a seller over the last couple of years, I think to Amazon's credit, they do a lot of things wrong, but they've done a really good job of trying to open up the kimono in terms of some of the back end data to help you
Mm.
make decisions better as a seller. I think the SQP report is probably one of the strongest things that's emerged over the last couple of years, and I know a lot of people kind of live and die by that in terms of assessing where they go next with their products
Mm.
and pay-per-click campaigns and things like that. Um,
Yep.
so I want to say it was probably 2 months ago. As most sellers, there's kind of two different avenues of growth.
Yeah.
And this is taking outside of other channels or other geographies, whatever, but just call it with what you're doing today. You can either expand your catalog, whether that's variants or riffing on what you already do, or completely new kind of elements that you haven't done before to expand your catalog. The other is you can optimize what you've already got. And
Yeah.
so that activity, both of those activities, frankly, are something that I really kind of dove deep into 2, 3 months ago. And a lot of this was tariff oriented, right? It's like, hey, when you're feeling the squeeze, you kind of have to turn over rocks that you wouldn't otherwise turn over. So that's the backstory. About 3 months ago, I was like, hey, we've got to find some new opportunities for new products, and we got to really optimize what we got,
Mm.
especially some that hadn't really been touched in a year or two, which most sellers have that experience. So I
Yeah.
started kind of tinkering. There's lots of different ways to go about that. There's third-party software, all the rest of it. But I really just started tinkering, and I think this is a worthwhile exercise for most people because unless you're an agency owner, you're probably not living and dying in Seller Central. And so, looking at all the nooks and crannies, Amazon has new things that you maybe don't realize are there. So
Mm.
that happened for me, man. Like for those two reasons, I was looking to kind of solve those two things. I was tinkering around Seller Central. And I want to say the Product Opportunity Explorer had come out at least a couple years ago now.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
it's
a bit longer. Yeah. But yeah.
yeah, maybe 3 years ago. I think it was one of the first new things that Amazon started to expose.
Yeah.
And I would say the first generation of Product Opportunity Explorer was effectively Amazon trying to fulfill gaps that they had in their catalog. So if they saw high demand areas that were stocking out or there weren't enough products, they wanted more people. Hey, we need more products in here, right?
Hmm.
Drive prices down, satisfy the demand that we've got. So I would say that it was Amazon serving initially, which is fair play. That's how most of those tools kind of start out, get you to spend more on ads or to get fulfill some gaps that they have in terms of revenue opportunities. So
Yeah.
after that, I was like, okay, whatever. I played around with it. There was nothing really useful. Hadn't looked at it in literally years.
Yeah.
So through this exercise, I was kind of digging around, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to growth. So if you go to your little hamburger bar in the top left, you go down to growth, you go to Product Opportunity Explorer, and I'm telling you, this cranny within Amazon Seller Central, I think, is the most valuable and the most underserved pocket that I've ever seen. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's just literally
Mm.
this has been sculpting the strategy for how we optimize existing products in the catalog, as well as exposing new opportunities for growth for existing brands and even new brands that we're working on.
Yeah.
So how it effectively works is when you go into, again, growth product opportunity explorer, there's basically a menu. You can either plug in one of your ASINs or you can plug in a keyword that you're looking to dive into. That could be a new category you're looking to dig into, and or it could be your existing catalog.
Hmm.
And what happens when you click on that and you enter a search term, it gives you two different views. It gives you a niche view, which is going to show you basically it's keyword based, but they say, hey, what's the customer need, right? So what is somebody searching to solve? What are they looking to buy? And then what are the associated top search terms that they are using to address that need. So it's really a new way to look at keyword research, and it's pretty profound. And it gives you lots of data. It gives you 360-day data, 180-day data on what's happening with the volume, a lot of interesting things.
Yeah.
There's also an ASIN view, which shows you, hey, for that particular category, who are the products or what are the products that are actually winning?
Hmm.
From there, what you can do is you can click on one of those customer needs. So again, if you type in, let's say, creatine, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to give you all different kinds of creatine pills. It's going to give you powders. It's going to give you gummies. It's going to give you different kind of demographics. Let's say I wanted to do a creatine gummy. Probably not a good idea, but let's, for
Hmm.
argument's sake, let's say I do that. I click on gummies. It's going to then give you a whole new world of that specific search term and intent that customers
Yeah.
are looking for. So here's where it gets interesting for me. So I think it's a couple things. It gives you really interesting understanding of what customers are seeking in terms of the need, which is not keyword based. And then it's giving you the keywords that those needs satisfy and all the different products that are competing. Once you niche down, say select creatine gummies, and you click on the actual customer need, it opens up a new set of things. And this is where it gets kind of interesting for product development and understanding how to really optimize your existing catalog, if that's what your intent is.
Yeah.
So, two things. We've seen that Amazon is really cracking down, and this is pretty new news over the last couple of weeks, but it's been going on for 6 months. The ability to scrape reviews. There's a couple software tools that have the ability. Most of the Chinese tools still do offer this.
Hmm.
Helium 10 got clamped down on. They can't really do this anymore. But even if you go in manually and try to look at what reviews you have on your product, they're going to limit you on what you can do. Outside web scrapers, AI tools, Amazon has effectively closed the gate on what third-party data access or scrapers have the ability to look at, which makes it
Yeah.
really hard if you're using your LLMs or your chat GPTs or some third-party Amazon-centric software tools to understand markets. But when you click on those niche details, Amazon, it's shocking what they give you. I'll just say that. So when you
Hmm.
go to the niche details, unfortunately, like a lot of their new tools, they don't have like the ability to export into spreadsheets and stuff. So you have to manually do this. But they basically have a niche overview. So for what, let's say you click on creatine gummies, it's going to tell you everything that you need to know about creatine gummies. So it's going to give you the seasonal patterns, when
Hmm.
peak and off peak is, what the seasonal alignment is. It's going to give you the niche brand structure. So, like the top five products cover 48% of the market, what the
Hmm.
competitive density is, which gives you insight into, hey, is this a fight I want to do? It gives you high level success factors. So, what are the product attributes that the most successful players in that space do? So, it's going to give you literally exactly what wins for conversion and what people are seeking. It's going
Yeah.
to give you positioning opportunities. So, these are more of the gaps that you may not be servicing from the existing market and kind of digging into those. And it gives you other like niche evolutionary indicators. So review count changes, price point distribution, all that. So that's one tab. And you can copy all this. So what I basically do is I'll go in to this tool. I'll copy this to a just a Google Doc. So you can
Hmm.
copy each of these sections. The
Yeah.
next section is top product features.
Hmm.
Very similarly, it's going to give you the top features that people look at. So this is important for two things. Number one, if you're going to be launching a product in a new market, you want to understand what the buying intent, and you're a king of this, Danny, what the objections are of the customers that are in that searching for those product types.
Yeah.
But what's really powerful, if this is a product you sell, I literally did this for one new launch, one relaunch, and one I would call it a mature product that does well in the category, but to optimize it.
Hmm.
And we redid the images, and all we did was look at the top features from this, and we turned it into an image. So it'll
Yeah.
give you the top three features. So if we're buying creatine gummies, this, and this, these are the three things that people care about. Well, guess what? Image one, image two, image three.
Yeah.
It will give you the common and uncommon features, which is really helpful for product development. So some of those niche features that are really catering to that need, but don't exist in a lot of the existing successful players that are in the space. And then it gives you like average age of products, etc. So that's product features.
Yeah.
The next tab it gets you, and again, the unfortunate thing is you literally it's just a wall of text. But they have a copy button.
Hmm.
And all I do is just copy each of these sections into Google Docs. The next is
Yeah.
customer reviews. And this is where I think they're going. I think they're going to offer a lot more of this within their API. I think we're going to be able to extract this a lot easier. But I think the reason that Amazon is shutting down the scraping is A, they don't want all of the data rich elements that they have accumulated with customer sentiment and what's happening across markets for other AI tools to use.
Yeah.
And they don't want sellers, for whatever reason, scraping reviews from their site. So they've kind of shut that pipeline off, but they basically give it all to you within this. So in the customer review section, it gives you the positive drivers. So the three things that, again, for that space, say creatine gummies, the three things that customers tend to like. It
Yeah.
gives improvement areas,
Hmm.
which again is objection slash product development.
Yeah.
And it gives you the expected evolution and strategic insights on that. So
Hmm.
effectively, you don't need to go pull the top 30 competitors and analyze 400,000 reviews and do all that. It literally does this for you, and it's real Amazon data that they've extracted, and that I believe their algorithm in search, in pay-per-click, in Rufus is orienting around pulling, hey, if a product can address these things, I'm going to give it more favor in the algorithm. And that's been proven out by the optimizations that we've done as a result of this data.
Yeah.
The next tab, which is really good, especially for images and positioning, is customer demographics. So if you sell a product and you have brand analytics, you can go in and you can see what your customer profile is, which
Yeah.
is super valuable. Everybody should do it. But what it doesn't tell you is like those are the people that are buying the product that you have based on how your product is currently listed, based on the current images.
Yeah.
What this does is it tells you the core demographics for, say, creatine gummies in terms of age range, income level, education, psychographic factors, so life stages, key values, purchase motivators. And then it basically gives you all of the customer archetypes of who are typically buying the product. So it'll give you a segment, like it might say serious athletes and fitness enthusiasts. It might have people that are into health management. It might be older people looking for neurological benefits. So it gives you all the different customer profiles of who's actually buying in this, which may not be your current product, by the way. So
Yeah.
what this is helpful for is not only do you have all the features that people are looking for, the gaps in the market, the key positive drivers from reviews, the key negative drivers from reviews. It also tells you who is actually purchasing the product. So guess what? You can include those people in your lifestyle imagery, and you're using the features and things that they actually care about in the images themselves. So from an image standpoint, it's really amazing. The next tab, and there's two more tabs I'm going to talk about. One is search terms.
Yeah.
So again, I think there's been so much in the space over the last 4 years about keywords. Obviously, it's a search term driven platform, and that's been the focus. And there's a million ways to do keyword research. There's a million software tools, and you can look at SQP, you can look at Datadog, you can look at Helium 10. This tells you for a particular niche what the
Yeah.
search terms are that matter. So
Hmm.
it gives you the top categories, it gives you the key keywords, the high volume ones, the fast growing ones, the high converting terms, the specialized terms or the long tail terms. And then it, by the way, gives you opportunity areas. So what are the search terms that people that are growing that are underserviced by the features and the products that are existing in the platform? And that
Yeah.
can literally just be, hey, my product already does that. I'm just not addressing it in my images or my listing. But effectively, it gives you the playbook on exactly what the search terms are that you need to focus on. And then the final one is pricing, which basically just breaks down all the different pricing gaps. So what's powerful about this is you can copy this into a Google Sheet, turn it into a text file,
Hmm.
and then go to your LLM of choice,
Yeah.
Claude, OpenAI, Manus, Gemini, whatever it is that you use. And then you go in and say, hey, I'm exploring this market and or I sell this product on Amazon. Here are all the details of the category of the niche. Develop me um, photorealistic image prompts that address these.
Hmm.
And then and I usually just say, give me like 20. So it'll give me 20 prompts that are based on data from Amazon that customers care about, um, that Amazon knows exist. You plug that in, you get these prompts, you use a reference image of your product and hammer out products. And literally, I've done this with now three different, a new launch, a relaunch, and an existing, I would say, optimization.
Hmm.
And after I optimize the images and the content, and really it's the conversion psychology is effectively what this tells you. It's who's buying, why they're not buying, what they care about, who they are. You throw all those into image prompts, and it's been bonkers, dude, in terms of the impact. Some of the best launches I've ever seen, some of the best optimizations I've ever seen from taking products that are 3, 4 years old and lifting them up. And I'm talking
Yeah.
within days and weeks.
Hmm.
So I think the so what of this is, if you have not gone to your little hamburger bar on the left side of Seller Central, gone down to growth, gone to Product Opportunity Explorer, typed in a keyword or a product that you sell currently, or evaluate new markets as you're looking to do a new launch, um, you are severely undergunned. I feel like this little tab within Amazon Seller Central is the holy grail of optimization, of product launches. It's non-technical, but it can also be data rich and technical if you want to dive into that. But the most important thing is it gives you all of the data points when you extract it and then leverage an LLM or an AI tool to help you really kind of put this into action. And if you did this today and you optimize your images alone and your listing for an existing product, literally in 2, 3 days, you can be live with new stuff. And then within literally a week, like as soon as you flip the switch on this stuff, every time I've done it,
Hmm.
it's been profound and material changes to ranking, conversion, traffic, lower cost per clicks, better pay per click ACOS, like all the things that you care about as an Amazon seller, it
Yeah.
drives. So I'll put the mic down there, man, and just say if you haven't checked out Product Opportunity Explorer, it could be one of the biggest hidden gems and the biggest data developments that I've seen within Amazon in years. It's amazing.
Excellent. So what I was going to do, and we'll bring up your slides on this as well. I'm just trying to prep this in the background so it's all coming from one place. And we've come up with some interesting things, right? So I've been looking deeper into things. I did the show a couple of weeks ago, like pre-recorded video. We had a conversation with Rufus, and it kind of goes against everything we discussed, right? So there's like the Amazon way, and then there's the other 97%, and that's not criticism. The reason I'm exploring it is because let's say the Amazon way doesn't work, then what do you do? Get rid of the product? Do you see where I'm coming from? It's like what we do and what the rest of the world does on Amazon is not the same. And to be fair with it is it's best to provide the information that backs it up, because when you're trying to explain this to people, they're not trying to hear it, because what it does, it kind of impacts their view on things. Do you see what I mean? Like if you're like, it goes this way, therefore anything I'm told different is not what I've heard, therefore it can't be true. So you have to give them the information behind it. And again, when I say this isn't a criticism. I'm saying, let's say that something you optimize, say you get 1 in 10 that goes off, great, yeah, that's your moonshot. What do you do with the other 9? And they're costing you money. And if the Amazon way doesn't work and there is another way, you should also explore that. That's the whole premise behind it, right? So if we go back like the last 10 years, do you understand the term social priming?
I've never heard it, and I have an idea what it is, but why don't you share?
Yeah. So for instance, like with a lot of things, a lot of the stuff that we do is led by affiliate style marketing. Not a problem with that. It works, right? It has its place. So there's the psychology behind it is the priming, right? So let's say that you're an affiliate marketer selling to other marketers that are selling to customers. Now, what will happen is if you're primed for that, then consciously or unconsciously, you might be doing that to customers and they're not primed for it. So because you go, well, that works, that hack works, or that technique works, and you should do this and you should do that, you might not even be conscious of it. But then what you're doing as you're primed for that, because it's priming, right? So you've got the affiliate marketer and then you've got the marketer. And if you're primed for those, you're going to be very receptive to those things. But then you're going to sell to a customer who's not necessarily primed for that. So you're thinking because they do it and you're primed for it that the customer accepts it, or you're not even aware that you're doing it. and which isn't a bad thing. So when you lead in from there, I did a lot of research to look like what stops the scroll. In our world, it stops the scroll this way. In the rest of the world, it's the complete polar opposite. So I think it's important to go through and show the balanced view of both sides, right? And what become interesting about it, and because I generated like 8 reports, so I run 5 of the 8 agents I've got to build up all this information to look to get like fair review on it, right? So it's not just like I want to find data that is completely polar opposite because I want to get attention. That's not what I'm doing. It's like when you set up a test, you've got to make sure the test is as fair as possible, because I can't remember what the term is. You know, it says statistics, and lies are more statistics. Like you can bend those things to your will because of confirmation bias. So you have to be a bit careful with that. So it's always important, if you're going to do studies, you try your best to set up a fair test. So for instance, let's say that you've got a product and you do your call outs, you do your swing tags and everything else, right? And then you do another one, and then your click-through rate goes up or your conversion rate goes up, whatever you measure in there, you'll measure both, but you see where I'm coming from. What you're doing is you're doing the same thing, but just changing the pixels on that one. A fair test would be to do the complete opposite and with the white background and everything else. Then you're comparing 2 different ways of doing things, right? But often, because you're putting so much money behind something, you're not going to compare both ways because you've been primed to do one thing one way. If you do it that way and you don't do all that, that's a threat on your sales. So really what you're doing is you're shifting a composite image around the page, doing the exact same thing with the same designer. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So you're never going to find out if you did it the way the other 97% does it on Amazon, right? Or our 97% customers react to that way, because there's too much risk. It's going to affect your ranking. You're spending much on PPC. So it's almost impossible to do those tests without taking big risks. Are we with it? Yeah?
Yeah.
So let me share my screen, and I'll go through the testing, and then we'll go through the slides, because what happened when I shared that with you and a couple other people, Ritu run it through NoteLM and sent it back. I sent that to you, and then you generated through Manus, and it was brilliant. What you did, you managed to really capture the essence versus in being a markdown file. So we can obviously discuss that. But it'd be good to say this is where it came from. Do you see what I mean? So if we go to, here we go. Let me just share from here. I'm just going to go into Claude and Visual Studio. Okay, so let me just start back here. So this, as you can see, this is prepared by the analytics report agent. So I used 6, I think it was 6 out of the 8. I'm not sure if I used them all, but what will happen is they've generated these various different studies, like the Reddit Skype findings, and then there's an analysis one, and I'll go into them in a minute. So this is the main image study, echo chamber versus.
And by the way, Danny, I'm not seeing. I don't know if it's just me, but it looks blank on my end. It looks like it's like Riverside.
Yeah. I know what's happening. I've got to come away from here. Let me stop sharing the screen, and then I'll bring this over the other side, because then that will trigger Riverside better.
Cool.
Then that way it becomes the secondary screen rather than a different browser view. Let me just quickly do that. Okay, right, let's get that, and we'll come back to comment. Now I'll share the secondary screen. Okay, you seeing that now?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so what we have here, so we've got the agent test run across the various different sub-agents, right? And then here are some of them there. Look, Trend Researcher, Reddit Scout, Content Creator, Growth Hacker, TikTok Strategist, Analytics Reporter, Feedback Analysis, and Support Responder. We didn't obviously use all of them. We just did what was relevant to use for the research. So then what it's come back with is these in report form. And so here is, some of it's a bit heavy handed. I haven't changed any of these or done any writing. These are purely generated markdown reports from the actions took place. So it talks about key findings and claims here. So evidence found, no credible evidence on call out or main images when it was doing the search. And we'll go through the searches. And then it gives you the verdicts here. Because the important one is we'll get to your slides because it's a bit prettier to look at, but it still captures the essence of these. So the research approach, trend researcher, Reddit scout, feedback analysis, analytics reporter. So look, search for pro call-out evidence, map to community debate patterns, analyze customer perspective and synthesize the findings. Search strategy, web search for academic databases, industry sources, Amazon Science publications, community sentiment analysis. Fairness protocol, to ensure the balance, we actively search for evidence supporting the echo chamber view. Pro call-out, with academic studies, brand built using busy images, category exceptions where clutters work, and split test data favoring callouts. The result, there was no credible supporting evidence was found. What that means is there's no peer research, academic research, or third-party research that backs the claims. But then people will share the information because of the success of their isolated testing. Yeah. So again, not a criticism, just gives you an idea where it comes from. Does it work? Yes, it does. Does it work on everything? No. What happens if you've got a product that's failing and it doesn't work on that? You may as well try something else. That's the end goal. Yeah. It's nothing against imagery and the way that they're done. So then it goes what Amazon actually requires. And then the cognitive load evidence. So this runs based on the cognitive load. So I call it lighting up like a Christmas tree effect. So what we think that stops the scroll is the polar opposite. People rush to get away from the busyness if everyone's trying to stop the scroll, right? So basically, if you're screaming and shouting effectively, no one's being heard. That's the premise of that. Can I just mute your mic, Adam? Because I've just got a bit of pickup noise in the background.
Yeah, sorry, let me.
Do you want to just punch that in and out when you want to speak? There you go, perfect. And then obviously just jump in wherever you want. So then it's gone through the cognitive load evidence, Amazon's own research. So I run a lot of the research I've got because I've got access to 475 source code projects of Amazon, including what's on live production. So this isn't a patent or a paper. This is live code sitting on that's generating and running on Amazon, right? So I'm trying to get as close as possible to the source, right? And some of these are obviously paper, but I'll get into these bits in a minute. Then the brand building box, anchor. So it discusses like where we are as a community. We're a mature community. I've been in 10 years, some have been longer, right? You've got your OGs like Chad and everyone. They've been here since 2005, 2010. So when we got to look at, okay, so what notable brands have crossed over to the consciousness that your mum, dad, the average person walking down the street will go, do you know any brands that started on Amazon that branched out off of Amazon? People may know Anchor and a few others, yeah? And so what it's doing is giving some of the names in there, but there's not a huge amount of them. And a lot of them, what they have in common, they're not necessarily got more of the busy call-out style images. Then it goes into the methodological problems, so survival bias, cherry picking, false comparison set. So it goes back to, what sellers may test is no call out versus without call out, with a call out winner, right? What they don't test is professional images, brand level photography versus the composite image. Yeah. So it's like, how do we test for those? Short term versus long term. So we press for click-through rate, but that can degrade over time. So if you catch you in the moment, you get a good click-through rate and you're optimizing for pixel nosebleed. That doesn't mean it doesn't decay your brand value over time, which I think you measured in your reports when you run through Manus. So these are just, I'm not going to run through all of these, but it just gives you an idea of the data has come from somewhere. I haven't touched the data. Right, this is the raw data that got kicked out into the reporting. The next thing what really is going to be important is, okay, if that's true, and that's not what I've heard, Why don't we look at things like how does actually things work on the most important part of the platform, okay, which is mobile. So if I just pull up here we go. So I'll go through these reference guides here. Let's go here. So what this is, this gives you a breakdown of the technical structure on Amazon in terms of mobile. So the goal is to stop the scroll and to be as big as possible and capture attention, right? Now, if you look at the way Amazon works, it's got the borders. So you'll go onto the results page and you'll see that they'll create the padding around the outside. This is a very known clear fact for psychology of creating the white space in order to allow for the product to breathe and for it to be uniformed. And so you've got a container style system, right? And the way that it renders on mobile. So your image is here. Here is the container. Often the container is a rectangle versus your square image, right? So we see the grey borders on the search results page. Sometimes when they're running offers and stuff, you're going to see like red and different color patterns, right? And so it'll give you the mobile grid layout here. So the common mistakes, problem, portrait images taller than wide or landscape images wider than tall. So it goes into here, it explains the technology that is used based on the technology that is used on Amazon, right? To how images render. And what the end goal is here is to understand is if you're attempting to become like larger, your image to be larger, but you're taking up every pixel and you're using solid colors on the background, you're actually getting the opposite effect to your desired request. What does that mean? So the way that the algorithm works, it is looking for complexity and density of the background of the image and solid colors. And what happens when something has a solid color on an open ground, psychologically, or the viewing of that image actually constrains it. So it puts it in a perfectly squared box. Now, if you go into mobile, quite often when you click through to the PDP and you click the first image, it's tall. And then when you swipe, they become square because they've got solid color in the background to support it that looks really good on desktop, right? But then what happens, if effectively 9 times out of 10, and there's going to be certain things with categories, if you want your product to look as big as possible, if that's your goal, you don't touch the edges either side, right? And you have a white background. And there's almost certainly that all of your images will be tall like your primary image. So I'm only saying about this because if your goal is to look bigger, there's 3 things you can do. You have the white background, you use camera angles to present it to make it look as big as possible from the right angle depending on the profile of the product. And the third thing is depth and perspective. You can create the illusion that something is closer to the camera, therefore larger, by placing something else in the distance. I think I sent you some photos where I showed you with one of the dog leashes, right? And I'm like, what do we do with this? This is the bestseller, but it's lit up like a Christmas tree. What do? Do we make it brighter, louder, and everything else? Or do we try and sell to the premium crowd as well? But it ends up becomes very, very difficult because when you test it, it could fail. So there's no guarantee it's still going to win, right? But if you've got a bias of searching to ensure it don't win, there's a good chance that you're going to push it that way because unconsciously the way that you're testing, right? So you have to try and keep a fair view from it. So this is giving you a bit of more of a background of what to expect. So why white backgrounds make products look bigger on Amazon? Okay, what sellers think, I'm not saying that they do, this is just a report generated. If I fill the entire image with colors and patterns and visual elements, my product would stand out and look better. The reality, busy color backgrounds make your product look smaller because it's been constrained and limited through Amazon's functionality. Now, if we look at the technical side of what we're trying to achieve here. So with the white background, what Amazon does, it removes the container constraints, expands the image to full screen height in most cases, enables pinch. This is still got to be tested because there are going to be one person out there will find something in here to go against it, and I understand why. And then it gives you the visual results to help you understand, look, busy, colorful background images. Yeah, maintains a container of constraints. Images stays in the bounded box. Limited or no zoom functionality. I would still question that in some cases. Then we looked at the image detection of the algorithm. So it breaks down some of the data of, some of the code there. So what does this do? White background indicates isolated products, safe to expand to full screen, right? Colorful, busy backgrounds might contain important context. Keep contained to preserve composition. White backgrounds enable clean expansion, no jarring visual transitions as they open up the image, right? Photography techniques that actually make products look bigger. We all know that fill in the frame. We all know that, you would expand your product. You wouldn't have a product like a Beardo or something like tiny on the screen. You're going to use as much of the space as possible. Of course you would. So you want to fill at least 85% of the frame. Yeah. So then it goes into what happens when close cropping on a colored background, what actually works, right? So with the white background, because it also gives the illusion, like sometimes you'll see stuff that's stretched at an angle. And then what you'll see is that you'll see the constrained image where it's kind of busy, depending on what the product is, as the main image, if it's got a non-white background. You get the illusion that the product, without all the stuff going on, is larger because the white space is helping with the psychological aspect of the separation and the focus on the product. So white background and strategic depth of field, right? Shallow depth of field, focus on the product center, subtle shadow for depth. Result, product pops forward visually, perceived depth makes it look larger and expands fully when tapped, right? So this gives you more of a professional catalog appearance, right? Camera angles that create size perception. This isn't the only one, but it's like one of the most commons, right? And then why it works. Human perception depth is equal to size, shows more surface area than straight on, mimics a natural viewing angle, and then creates a visual interest without clutter. The slight height angle, tabletop products, best for kitchen items, beauty product. So it gives you an idea of those. Then you've got the mobile zoom behavior and technical breakdown. Okay. And then you come here, the matters for conversion, white background, professional, product looks professional, You see where we're going. I think right now I want to just get into the slides because then I can bring you into the fray to have that conversation. Let me just go back up to here, right? Let me close the Explorer. And do you want to walk through what you did? Because obviously you took the data, Adam, and let me stop sharing. And I'll let you have a little run at it. I'll scan through, I'll do the slides. Do you want to walk through what you did for the setup?
Yeah, so I mean, what I've been doing with AI in general is most people use AI as a search bar, right? So they go ask it a question, do some research, tell me how I should do my Amazon images, main images, and then it'll go out and it'll crawl the web, and some of those sources are reliable, some of them aren't.
Yeah.
What I basically did, because you basically, and anytime you want to get anything out of LLM, just like the Product Opportunity Explorer, is the more that you can give it raw information to guide it where you want to go, the better it's going to do in terms of the output. So what I basically did is you had a bunch of MD files. MD files or JSON files are basically structured in a way that a computer can assess it a lot easier. So
Yeah.
Danny had, through all that research you just kind of walked through and all the outputs, there had MD files. I took all those MD files. I've been training the AI tools that I use on how I wanted to analyze information and how I want it to present things visually. So this is like based on like the branding I like to have for slide decks. So I basically took that data, prompted it for the output that I wanted, which was basically a comprehensive slide deck. Take as many slides as you want to basically extract and pull out the pertinent information. And then I also, when I'm assessing new markets for Amazon, when I'm analyzing data, I have a very specific way from an Amazon seller perspective that I want the financial assessment to be done. And so it's done that there. So basically, anytime you can have really good raw information in MD files, text documents, things like that, that you can use as the front end foundation of the data to analyze, you get better outputs. So that's effectively what I did. I put in all of Danny's MD files. I gave it a detailed prompt in terms of how I wanted it to output a presentation. And then this is what came out of it.
Cool. So let's go through this. We'll go through this because it obviously it'll take a lot of time, but I can share this deck anyway. Because there's 53 slides. So if we quickly flick through, so you can see that where I showed you the tools that I used to do the search, the agents that were built to capture the information, and people are welcome to the raw files as well, right? Because it's about trying to be transparent and get a balanced point of view on this and focus on products that are not working. Is there another way of trying things outside the traditional Amazon way, right? So this is give the approach, and then the seller community promotes practices. Do you want to go through the enforcement gap?
Yeah, so I think Amazon obviously has requirements and they enforce them I would say on a vertical by vertical basis. A lot of times in home goods you'll see they don't care about white backgrounds or they let it go. Other ones they're very restrictive, but effectively Amazon does have main image requirements, typically because they know that it's going to help convert better.
Yeah.
And if a busy background help stuff convert better, they would let people do it or they would change the rules. So I think yeah, I think a lot of times people avoid following the rules in categories they shouldn't because they can get away with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most optimal way to generate revenue, click-through rate conversion, and make more
Yeah.
money for that listing.
Yeah. All right. Let's quickly flick through these. So this is going through about forums, picking up in different groups. And so here are some of the things that it's picked up in perception: survival, buyership, only winning tests to get shared, and then cherry picking the moonshots, false comparison sets, sellers test an image A, no call out, versus image B with a call out, but they never test against image C, professional branding, Apple, etc., etc. Right? And then you've got the short-term metrics only. Sellers measure CTR, and this not necessarily true. This is what's come back. It said 7-day conversion window. Context removal. Test winners are shared with category, product type, price point, or competitive context, making generalization dangerous. And I'm not saying that's the case. This is the information that came back from agents that run the test, right? And then you've got peer-reviewed neuroscience, and it talks about how the cognitive effect, right, on busy images. So we have to be aware that if someone's scrolling the page and every image is really busy, right, because they're shouting to catch your attention, if there's one that appears that doesn't do what everything else is, what is that? That's also a pattern interrupt. A pattern interrupt can only occur if the inverse happens. Make sense? So if everything's busy, and I'm not saying it's someone's going to buy it. What I'm saying is, if everything looks the same in the CSA and something changes, that too is a pattern interrupt. So you got to work at, there is night and day, right? There's happiness, there's sadness. There's always the polar opposite. You've got to work out where you sit in the pocket for those things, right? Professional photography gets attention, cluttered sections get ignored, right? So when we talk about this, we talk about like the composite images. We're talking about images that when the information is filled out, like if a picture is well lit and it's got a reflection, natural shadows and stuff like that, there's less room to put stuff. But if you strip all those, then you've got this white space. So there feels a necessity to fill it, right? To capture the attention. So that can sometimes work against. Revenue uplift. Okay, so do you want to go into this? Because I thought this was, and this is Amazon's internal research.
Yeah, so this is and again, I think the tricky thing with this is like there's always going to be situations where I added a big keyword on my thing and I got a better click-through rate, and the Amazon A/B experiment showed that it was better. So
Yeah.
there's obviously generalizations and then there's specific use cases. I think the point is that in general, if you actually leverage white space, it's almost like an exhale, right? Like if you're going through and like everyone gets those like still in snail mail, at least in the US, you get these like catalogs and it's coupons and it's like all this stuff and it's like it's so much that you don't even want your brain doesn't even want to read it. You know what I mean? It's just too much. And
Yeah.
then there's sometimes where you see, say, an Apple listing photo of an iPhone or whatever, and it's almost like an exhale. It just kind of feels nice. It and you can't explain it. There's psychology, there's neurology going on here, but it just kind of feels nice. And so I think what this is talking about is generally speaking, across the Amazon catalog, across data that they've looked at,
Mm.
ones that leverage that psychological white space that creates that inherent feeling of an exhale, that kind of calmness, is the one that is going to perform better on a large enough data set on a long enough timeline. Now, are there categories, are there situations where if everyone's using a white thing and then you've got your little thing with a bit more color, does that draw people in? Sure. But I think on a long enough timeline, and if you were to select the most likely way to be successful, leveraging that white space is going to be the one that actually um, gets you better results. And Amazon data shows that, and that's probably why they have the rules that they have on images.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I would say everything becomes a situation.
Yes.
Different product, different market, different color, different size, different price pot, different brand. You have to measure based on what's there, not generally like cross category. Now, there's a difference in this, which I spoke to someone. Do you know Fraser? He does 50 million a year. He does the morph suits. When you've
I
got a
don't know.
huge,
Yeah.
right, so he's a UK seller. So when you've got a huge catalog, it's very hard to test everything when it's a huge catalog. There's just not enough hours in the day. So they have to do sample testing and just live with it, right? So let's just say they've got 50 things in that vertical versus 75 in the other. They can only test certain ones and then they have to give it a broad stroke because there's no, it doesn't make financial sense to test every single one of them to get the individual results. But if you've only got 10 ASINs, it's worth testing, right? Because it's much more manageable to dial in and do proper testing on those. Consumer research reveals fundamental disconnect from seller tactics, right? Clear focus, less visibility noise, pro quality, clean definition. What builds trust? Customer photos in reviews, we know that. Professional product photography, accurate representation, clean, uncluttered design. And then you've got misleading images, exaggerated claims, which is kind of controlled with the suppression with images anyway, right? I'll get into a bit of that later because a lot of the stuff, like I've got the whole of Amazon's taxonomy, US side, in a database finally. Took a long time to get there. I got every browse node, every refinement, but every day it moves away and you still got to change it. And then we've had the depreciation of the catalog. Nearly everything I've seen as the problem is the language in the listing. When I was able to kind of reverse engineer, because when we look at catalog, right, I'm slightly changing subject and I'll go back on. When we look at catalog, the catalog system is a filtered deterministic system. So it's the mechanical system. Amazon's correction of remapping is semantic similarity. And that lies where the problem is. So the language in your listing would trigger a different product type because they're doing auto mapping unless it's been done by human change. So on one side, it's semi-deterministic versus probabilistic. And then on the other side, they're using a system which is based on similarity, which is still capturing stuff in the net. So you still have to be very careful with what you put language-wise in your listing that could drive you to, from a sports to a medical device. Does that make sense? And it can be as little as 1 or 2 words. Misleading images drives returns, debate the gap, the cost. Do you want to make comment on this so I can flick through because we're only on?
Yeah, yeah. I think the big point and I think what I would say with the thesis that we're kind of seeing with this data is I don't think that this means that you can't use 3D renders and that you shouldn't like do a selfie photo of your product and then use AI to do it. I think the point is that you want it to look photorealistic. and like somebody doing a Apple product shoot would do their shoot.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think the problem is that when you use stuff that is not what the product really is, which if you start using weird little effects and stuff like that, and the product that somebody gets is not that, yeah, you might have gotten the click and you did an Amazon A/B test and there's a higher click-through rate, higher conversion rate. Great. The problem is, and I've learned this the hard way, frankly, with maybe overselling or not underselling, the reality of what happens when you get a product, as an example,
Hmm.
is that customers return it. So your return rate goes from 3% to 5%. You may say, hey, who cares? But that 3 to 5%, and then all the negative reviews that come from it, and that impacts your click-through rate on a long enough timeline, may erode any click-through rate and or conversion rate benefit that you would have initially gotten. And over time, that's going to collapse your organic rank, it's going to increase your pay-per-click, etc.
Yeah.
So I think the point is, use clean photography. It could use 3D models, it could use AI, but if you start to get too flashy and it misrepresents what your product actually is, it could come back to bite you.
Yeah, bit like with 3D rendering, not that people need to do it as much now, especially with Nano Banana Pro, etc. We're getting a lot more realistic imagery if we're investing in camera angles and using some of the techniques that will generate that when it's prompted. The community conflates secondary image, right? The badge workaround, e-service quality research, what actually drives satisfaction, efficiency, the ease and speed of access and understanding information, fulfillment, blah blah blah. Seller optimized for this is the thing is the obsession with click-through rate, and as we'll find out later, I understand why you would be obsessed with click-through rate. Makes sense, doesn't it? Why wouldn't you be? But then there's the degrade effect in some cases over time, which you have to measure because you might capture a period of really good click through rate, but you then drive in brand fatigue and then your click through rate goes down. And what do? You go harder, don't you, to get the click through rate back up. So you have to be careful of when you're measuring stuff, is to look at all the different channels, how it could, you've got to join some dots there go to do the problem solving because sometimes the hammer isn't always going to be the key option for this. So rewards engagement. I don't know where this come from. Whoever said, because it's obviously pulled from research, the A9 algorithm rewards engagement, not visual complexity. It's not this bit here. Sorry, I got this bit wrong. There was a bit in there that it was saying that you get signals from busy images in the report, and which is bullshit, right? But obviously, when you're doing that research online outside a peer review, properly studied thing, there's going to be comments as well because it's picking up the analysis of the sentiment in and around discussions. The aggregated gap, even testing platforms reveal limitations. The segmented truth, budget shoppers, target audience, and then you've got. I want to check this data as well because you generated this, but off the data. I want to see what backs because it's important this stuff gets backed up as well. Cost barrier, DIY culture, Canva, etc. Commodity trap. Do you want to go into this one?
Yeah, let me just review this again, just so so I think, and again, this is tricky because like a lot of Amazon sellers, frankly, aren't building. They want to just capture sales, and that's fine, and you can be successful doing that. I think like a example that I love to think about is a brand called Thrive, which is in the supplement space. Obviously, the biggest knife fight that exists on Amazon, or one of them, is supplements.
Yeah.
And supplements is where you see a lot of, I would say, that affiliate-esque approach, which I think
Yeah.
has informed other categories, which is, okay, it's got a peach flavor, so I'm gonna have peaches exploding behind it, and I'm gonna have 60 servings as a badge on there. And again, I'm not saying that those things don't work, because obviously they do, otherwise people wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny, if you type in, say, creatine on Amazon, or you type in a lot of these really large categories, Thrive is a brand that tends to be at the top most of the time. And if you look
Mm-hmm.
at Thrive, they go in the face of every best practice that you would assume to exist within the supplement category. So they just have the
Yeah.
bottle. The bottle itself has fairly small font, clean, again, Apple S photography. Their secondary images, frankly, are pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so, well, why is that? And I think there's a lot going on here. You could say that, well, they're off Amazon and that contributes to their success. I think that that's absolutely true. They're a
Yeah.
large brand with retail, so they're well known. They've got embedded trust. People are seeking them. If they see Thrive, they're just going to buy. All those things exist, but how did they get there?
Yeah.
They didn't get there by being flashy and then all of a sudden they're successful and then they moved to white. They got there by diving into, hey, I'm going to make a really good product that has clean ingredients that people can trust, that's
Hmm.
third party tested. I'm not going to be flash and dash. I'm just going to like deliver it as it is. And
Yeah.
so I think there's just the thesis here is that in a space where everyone's busy, everyone's clouded, one that stands out is one that's not. I think again, it's going to be category specific. That's an example that I like to look at. So again,
Yeah.
that's the brand mode, which is like, hey, on a long enough timeline, that clean approach tends to win, and that tends to be the ones that do best in most categories on Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, look, we covered the survival bias trap and stuff. Evidence tier, peer review, visual complexity and brand perception, the impact of image quality on trust, cognitive load. So there's plenty of the findings from, and I've got all the original literature that people can have access to as well. This is an interesting one. So I know that science is not everyone's cup of tea and people dismiss it, and that's cool as well, but you've got to put everything in the mix. So we proposed a method to automatically detect the salient object and remove background noise to improve visual search relevance. Text overlays and non product graphics are classified as noise. So you can take what you want from it because as soon as you say Amazon Science, you know, unless it's Rufus from some of the crowd, you know. What's quite interesting, if we look back a year on Rufus, there's been there's been a big shift. I think I've just lost Adam now when he jumps back on. Evidence, what's the smart money does? Top aggregators, enterprise brands, top agencies. Again, I'll share these slides. Flawed conclusions, it's saying on this side, and then valid observations. What this side gets wrong: the attention fallacy, the algorithm myth, the safety illusion, and the mobile blind spot, the commodity mindset. So you can pause as we go through here. Let's see where Adam is. He should be jumping back. Soft lost connection, trying to come back in. Let's see if I can get Adam back in. Let me just quickly, I can edit this out afterwards. I'll just send him a message. Reboot your browser and then try and access then, and you should be able to click and come back in. So I just send in a message on WhatsApp. All right, let's go through here. The evidence standard, we'll skip that. Stop obsessing over click-through rates, best seller rank, and total sessions. Look to Adam's coming back in. Let's get him back in here. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So just move to this one here where it says metrics actually matter, click-through rate obsession, you know, stops obsessing over bestseller rank and total sessions, optimize for session percentage, custom lifetime value, and brand search volume. Don't know about that, but it's going to differ across different brands for what their desire and what they measure and where it is relevant to them. And then context matters. So we're looking at the different categories here. Again, I'll add these slides as a URL so people can access these. This is an interesting one. Do you want to run through this? The cost of trust.
Yeah, so I think this gets into long-term value, which again, in a traditional D2C context, if somebody's spending a bunch of money on ads on Facebook, Meta, TikTok, whatever it is, it's a
Yeah.
world that people would be familiar with. Amazon sellers, it's not as much. Amazon sellers, it's much more, I would say, what's the first transaction look like?
Yeah.
Because again, if you dominate a certain amount of organic keywords, you've got to optimize ACoS. You do have an ATM money printing machine, but you're
Yeah.
chasing after new customers most of the time, obviously, right? And
Yeah.
you don't really think of the customer relationship in a long-term view. I think what this is basically saying is in addition to first click and your initial A costs and your click-through rate and all those things that are a really relevant front-end financial metric, there are other metrics that come into play, which is, okay, what happens if customers review my product better over time, even if they don't purchase again? Well, that could lead to higher click-through rate, higher conversion rate on the long term if I perform better and I've got a product that is represented in the listing that is actually what customers get.
Yeah.
Um, if somebody purchases a product and they have a good experience with it, they come back and either buy that product again if it's a consumable, or they come back and they buy other products on your catalog over time.
Yeah.
Your return rates are lower, therefore you've got, you don't have the sunk cost of destroying inventory, shipping it back and forth. There's obviously negative customer sentiments that exist. So I think the point is that there are metrics beyond that first transaction that are important, and playing the long tail game, I think, is the future of Amazon. And I think that what we've seen, especially over the last 2 years, kind of coming out of the aggregator era, and I would call it Gen 1 and Gen 2 Amazon sellers, is that they're starting to get spit out for this reason, because as the market matures, as it gets more professional, costs go up, the cream rises to the top, and the ones that are focused on that short-term view tend to get spit out and get hurt the most.
Yeah. So you got the psychology of first impressions. I'll skip through because there's still quite a lot there. Trust equation, visual
Yeah.
clarity, consistency, minus friction equals to trust. Mobile versus desktop. I've kind of gone through there, breaking down the technical parts and the reverse, well, the inverse effect of the constraint on trying to make something larger, but in effect, you're getting pushed against. Works on desktop, of course, but if 60-70% sales coming from, say, from mobile, whatever the actual metric is, I'm not definitely sure, but it's somewhere up there. You're going to want to look at how do we maximize it. If your end goal is to be as large as possible, then you may need to review the way that you're looking at things in order to enact that. That's going to be your depth of field, it's going to be your angle, and quite possibly it's going to be the white background if you're looking for on mobile for the image to be tall as you click on it on the PDP.
Yeah, and a real quick point on that, Danny.
Yeah.
A real quick point on that one, not to belabor it, but if you go to your business reports and then you go, I think it's the child variation view.
Yeah.
Amazon now gives you the data on desktop, mobile app, and mobile, and you can basically see how you convert across the different platforms that somebody may be looking on a screen. And the data that I've seen, and I'm talking 4,000 plus ASINs that we run this through, it's usually about 65 to 68%. So I think that's whether it's 60% or 70%. The bottom line is most people are going to be purchasing on a mobile phone, especially if the product's less than $100 or non-technical in nature.
Yeah.
And so it's something very easily we can test. We ran this test, we changed and optimized for mobile. And as you would expect, I think we would see like a 2% improvement in click-through rate on mobile, which is 70% of the traffic. So you're not just improving your conversion rate 2%, you're improving 2% on 70% of your traffic. So what is, I don't think this is anything new, but mobile matters.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's higher than 50%. So you've got to pay attention. End of story. Depends on what you're selling. Information overload and decision paralysis. Kind of interesting, the inverted U for visual complexity. So we got across the bottom here, we can see minimal, simple, optimal, busy, cluttered, and chaotic. And then we've got the cognitive load theory. The human brain has limits and working memory, approximately 7 items. Visual clutter consumes this process power, leaving less capacity for the actual purchase decision. The paradox of choice. As the amount of information increases, confidence initially goes up, but quickly peaks. CTR. Beyond that point, anxiety increases and conversion crashes. That's a bit of a stretch, strong language. When faced with too much visual stimuli, the brain defaults to a safety mechanism it's a no in terms of taking action. When you shout everything, the customer hears nothing. So it goes back to pattern interrupt. You've got to look at the plus and the inverse of that. The Rufus AI implication, everyone's favorite dog. Product image, visual model, Rufus answers. The hallucination risk. does this blender have a glass picture? I cannot confirm the material from the image. The view is obstructed by a bestseller badge and text overlays. That's not going to happen now because of suppression. The ground truth, does a blender have a glass picture? Yes, the image shows a thick, transparent glass picture with measurement and markings. That's the other thing as well. When we're looking at translucent on white background, it can be quite tough for people to get that to pop. But there are means and ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Competitive analysis.
And one quick thing,
Go on. Yeah.
oh, sorry, one quick thing there, Danny, I think is important is I think that when it comes to AI, like here's the reality is most customers are going to maybe look at 3 of your images. Like if you've got 9, they may get through the first 3. So most customers aren't going to see your whole thread of images, right? But I think one fallacy that I see a lot of people make is they try to get everything into the main image,
Yeah.
like every feature, every keyword, every like whatever. So because they're thinking, hey, AI is reading this, I want AI to, but here's the thing is you could have a very clean initial image and maybe you put one core keyword or something on the bottle or whatever it is, but all those other things, you've got 10 other images. Amazon AI is going to scrape all of them, even if a human being as a shopper doesn't look at all of them. So if you're concerned about accomplishing the information that AI is going to scrape to make your product relevant for Rufus questions and keywords and other things, you can do it on the other images. So you don't have to do it all with the main image. The main image is to get people to understand what you are, to stand out versus the competition. The algorithm is going to pick up that other stuff, not just in the main image. So
yeah. Then you got the false advertising risk. There's a lot more that's controlled now with suppression. So that obviously when it's collecting the information and being that it's AI, there's going to be a period of time. Some of the stuff won't refresh past November of last year. The accessibility dimension, the language barrier, the vision barrier, the cognitive barrier. Okay, a picture is worth 1,000 words in any language, but only if you can see it clearly. The consistency principle, fragmented identity, the flea market effect, result confusion and distrust, and unified identity, the halo effect. Customers need 7 impressions to remember a brand. It's the same theory, I suppose, 7 touch points as well, right? A lot of stuff is discussed on that as well. The premium pricing power, the commodity, $19.99, the brand $34.99. It looks professional and safe. I'm willing to pay more for quality assurance. The signaling effects, clean high-end imagery signals original manufacturer, sorry.
yeah, and I think
go on.
yeah, and I think a key point here again, I'm not saying that busy images don't work in some categories, but I think a
They
lot
do.
of
If
where
you
the
test them and they
ethos comes
work and
from
you're
is that
selling, yeah, they do work.
yeah, but the
But
problem is that if you're selling a premium product, which a lot of sellers now would need to because they don't have the cost and manufacturing advantage, they can't cut corners and avoid tariffs through shady means, all that basically means, and we know that the lower price products on Amazon tend to be the top 5. You've done extensive work on that.
yeah,
So you're never going to win there, but they're going to look and say, well, look, the winners in my category that are like, let's say that it's my little drink mixture or whatever, right?
mm-hmm.
I'm doing and it's 9.99 and I'm selling $1 million a month, but I've got my busy image because I'm a 9.99 guy. And I think, okay, well, the best sellers in the category of the drink mixers all use busy images. And if you go look at a drink mixer thing, it is crazy. But guess what? What if your product's $20, not 9.99? How could you stand out? Well, maybe you have the non-busy one because people that are looking for premium don't want the flash and dash crap, right? So again, some of this is contextual, but I definitely think this cleaner approach definitely plays better into premium positioning, which most sellers may be forced to do because of the economics of Amazon and international trade now.
And if you go back to the while your affiliate style images might fail, right? I cover that in there. Let's pretend an image is a human being, right? If someone says one thing and does the opposite, right? That's a lack of congruency. If that person does one thing and says another, you get a distrust. So if your listing is saying premium because you wrote the words in there premium and presented it as premium, but your images don't reflect that, you're going to miss on the congruency side because you're going to have Well, you're telling me one thing and I'm seeing another, right? And if they see that, then that's going to have impact, because what happens? The lack of congruency then levels out as lack of trust. The search behavior shift, the scanner, visual pattern matching, scanning for shapes, colors, selecting process, see image, feel emotional, click, attention span, infinite scroll, decisions made in 0.5 seconds per item. Then what's this here? Primary input, the 2015, the reader, text keywords, men's leather wallet, RFID, section process, retitle, check price, glance at image, attention span, deliberate browsing, willing to read bullet points on the search page. Well, I don't know where we're getting this information from. It's not exactly right. The review sentiment connection, the number one driver of negative reviews. We know about reviews. The trap of CTR. Click-through rate is a vanity metric. Oh, that's a stretch. It is easy to gain with clickbait images, but often leads to high bounce rates and low conversion rates. So we've got that situation. A couple of things here that, well, you've got to diagnose it on an individual basis. A couple of things here. You could have a good click-through rate and a poor conversion rate, and it could be the oversell of the image possibly, but quite often is you need to interrogate your leaky bucket, which is your PDP, because Amazon smashes it with everyone else's products. So you have to look and study for leaks there. The goal profit, focus on session value. Does the click results in a sale? A low CTR with higher conversion rate is always more profitable. Would you argue against that? We'll say it again. A lower CTR with a higher conversion rate is always more profitable. What's your take on that, Adam? The word always.
I think it depends on the scale. And yeah, I think it depends on the scale. I mean, you can just do the math, right? Like, let's say that you got 10,000 clicks and your conversion rate was 5%. And let's say that you got 1,000 clicks and your conversion rate was 20%. Obviously, you're going to get more sales from the 10,000 clicks. So this isn't true all of the time, but I think on the level, I would optimize for conversion rate before click-through rate. And I think, again, the reality is that if you do all these things cohesively,
Yeah.
the total math is going to pay in your favor for things. But I mean, here, let me say it another way. If I look at an SQP report as an example, and if I look at organic ranking,
Yeah.
it's going to be based on conversion rate. So you could get lower traffic. Like, I've got an example. I had a product that was $89.99. And we're talking about a product that does north of 8 figures a year, one single product. It's a bunch of variations, and there's no way that that should be competing against others in the category that are $15 and $20, right? Because it's going to get way less clicks. But for whatever reason, it was in the top 10, even though it was double or triple the price of what the other products are. And I think the reality is that Amazon's looking at total dollar value converted as well as engagement on the page. And so they will bring premium products that have a lower click-through rate but a much higher conversion to the table because the total value of the transactions is higher. So a lot of this is going to be dependent, but again, I would say if you're going premium, if you don't have super tight margins to compete on price, conversion rate optimization is going to be click-through rate optimization every time. If you're playing the volume game and you're like, hey, I want to make 5% margins, 8% margins, have a super low price, click-through rate is going to be better than conversion. But on the whole, most sellers, I think conversion rate optimization beats click-through rate optimization, although they can both be correlated.
Yeah. So. Okay, policy. What else we got here? Because it's getting long into today. We're in an hour and 30 minutes. Thank you. Here we go. So, resources and citation, balance study, final report, main image study framework, cognitive load analysis, feedback analysis, analyst findings, trend researcher findings, Reddit scout findings. Cool. That was pretty intense getting through that lot. People are going to take it for what it is. The information's there. Everything's a choice. Critical thinking. I always say to people, review everything. Do you see what I mean? Don't just take everything at face value, especially if stuff isn't working in your favor always look at the opportunity to learn from other ways of learning, right? So you might say, well, I do this and someone does that. It doesn't mean you're wrong or they're right. It's situational. Most of this stuff is situational. And it's generally, when it comes to this stuff, on a product
Yeah.
level and no more than that, right? Because if we look at the factors that are involved, there's probably 1,000 things that affect your conversion rate, but you can't measure them all and you're not aware of them all. But you do what you can, end of the day. Any final words before we wrap?
Don't think so, man. It was good to jam again. It was fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, this stuff's always going to be interesting, and try and see what works. That's it. But let's wrap here. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted after the this week, but Design Loop I'll roll out tomorrow. I've just updated the prompt engine, wrote new logic. So now what happens, from every image, it gets reviewed, and then for every output, it improves. So I don't think that exists, generally speaking, and we'll roll that out and see how people get on. And I hope they enjoy it. The waitlist has been building up. So once I get the guys from the workshop on Monday on board, get some testing with them, I'll start letting everyone else. And as I said, it's free. Anyone can use it. All right. So
Awesome.
you'll get access as well. All right, guys. I'll see you again back here next week, week 2. Us Main Image Monthly next week. So Sim will be back, Dorian, and of course, Matt. Adam, best way to reach you?
I'm not as active on YouTube anymore, but I'm going to start cranking out some content here in the near future. So Adam
Yeah.
Heist on YouTube, Adam Runquist on LinkedIn, and yeah.
All right, guys. Take care of yourself. Much love to your family. Hope you're going to get some rest in. Christmas just around the corner. I hope you did very well. It's a tough time out there, but we're both rooting for you. And let's see if we can turn some corners. Take yourself and your family, and I'll see you again here.